We live in a highly complex, hyper-reactive environment. Yet when our patient snaps, we often reduce the entire experience to a single, blunt syllable: mad, or perhaps furious. Relying on these blanket terms makes it difficult to diagnose what is actually happening inside our heads. If you only have one word for an emotion, you only have one tool to manage it. Treating this feeling as a single, solid object makes it impossible to control. To navigate an outburst, we have to pull it apart and decode its specific architecture. This architecture operates on a timeline. The first phase is the ignition, the rapid spikes in heat that trigger with no warning. This sudden flash is a match that forgets the rain. It is a stubborn flame that ignores the reality of its surroundings, actively refusing any external attempts to cool it down. In this state, you walk a tightrope woven from sparks. It is a precarious balance where every second risks a total emotional outbreak. These short fuses define common environments, like a tense office meeting or a single sharp comment over dinner. These intense flashes are purely reactive. At this stage, a tiny spark can instantly alter the atmosphere of an entire room. When that initial spark doesn't dissipate, the heat moves inward, creating a state of intense, sustained pressure. This is a locked furnace. It represents the extreme emotional heat trapped behind a carefully controlled, stoic exterior. The pressure builds into a storm in the ribs, the physical sensation of wind and weather hitting the inside of the chest. All that trapped energy gathers into a boiling kettle of words. It is the suppression of harsh speech that is actively whistling for a release. Trapping emotional weather inside the body is inherently unstable. It guarantees an eventually violent release. When the internal pressure finally breaches, the person shifts into a total loss of behavioral control. This creates inescapable noise, a drum with no mute, or a siren in the skull that overrules every calm thought. The outward behavior often looks like a wild wolf on a short chain, aggressive, deeply volatile, and barely restrained. To understand this volatility, we have to look past the snarling and examine what is actually fueling the fire. High-intensity rage is often a bonfire built from quiet fears. If you look at the base of the flame, you find small underlying anxieties, doubts, and shames. This aggression functions as a guard dog that remembers how to sleep. It barks to defend a limit, but it ultimately seeks safety and rest. This process, known as defensive transmutation, turns our insecurities into a mask of hot iron. We project a hardened, heated face to the world to shield the vulnerabilities we aren't yet ready to name. Once the mask begins to slip, the architecture moves toward release. The heat remains, but it starts looking for release. The person becomes a hot coal, waiting for cool water, lingering tension that actively desires a calming intervention. This energy is a river in flood, searching for banks. It needs a safe, guided structure to turn that force into something useful. Providing that structure allows the feeling to become a fist that slowly learns to open. The grip of the grudge eases, moving the focus from defense to understanding. Decoding the specifics of our anger transforms it from an uncontrollable disaster into a navigable transition. By identifying the underlying fears and specific pressures of the outburst, we can finally assess the landscape left behind. When an outburst forces hidden truths to the surface, it becomes a storm that leaves a garden greener. Surviving the conflict provides the clarity needed to feed fresh life into the relationship. Understanding the architecture of our anger allows us to use the storm to rebuild a stronger emotional foundation.